Utah, Ohio State, Rose Bowl, New Year's Day. Huge game for the Utes and the Buckeyes, and it's still the granddaddy of them all. We got Michelle Bodkin on the line from Ute Zone on 247 Sports to help us break it all down. Michelle, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing really well, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here to talk some Utah football. Didn't look like a Rose Bowl team or a Pac-12 champion back in September. The quarterback switch was made during the BYU game in particular. I remember Charlie Brewer, the Baylor transfer, not necessarily getting the team around him to perform up to their capabilities, and Cameron Rising, the transfer himself in from the Big 12, comes in, and the improved play over the back half of the season. Can we point just to that quarterback switch? Because that's the overriding storyline, but was there more to it than that?
I think that was kind of the biggest part of it. You were close. It was actually, I think a lot of people would have liked to have seen that switch made against BYU. It was actually the following week against San Diego State.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was kind of well after halftime even. And I remember sitting in Carson, California, and just thinking, oh my gosh, this is not the team that was advertised to me. It wasn't the team that was advertised to anyone. They looked so far from potentially a playoff team, potentially a Rose Bowl team, potentially a Pac-12 conference winner. Like, they just were very womp to start. And you wouldn't think that changing just one position like that would make such a huge difference, and yet it did. I think it was like halfway through the third quarter of that San Diego State game that they made the switch from Charlie Brewer to Cam Rising, and something clicked. They didn't win that game, but he got them to triple overtime and gave them a shot to. And the game looked like it was well over. And then from there, they just kind of steadily got better with him at the helm. For whatever reason, he was their guy, and Charlie was not.
Folks, please like the video, share these videos out on social media, subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football, and check out Michelle's work and the rest of the crew there at Ute Zone on 247 Sports. So there's always, and even more so these days, the narrative of incentive and motivation for bowl games. Mm-hmm. We got to think that Utah is playing the part of the team that is highly motivated in this one, having never gone to the Rose Bowl, won the Pac-12 championship, and a fairly new member to the conference. So I got to think there's no motivational issues there. Ohio State, we can conjecture all we want, but on the Utah side, what are they saying about this opportunity?
It's a huge opportunity for them, and it's something that they've kind of been wanting since they joined the conference in 2011. And they were very close that first year to getting it because USC was still under penalties. And so they kind of came in and they had a chance to win the South. They were a field goal away from that and missed it against Colorado and ended up going to the Sun Bowl that year. But they kind of had people on their heels at that point and had a couple of years that were a little bit more of a slump and they weren't as good. They put up a fight, but they just weren't winning games. And then in 2014, things just kind of clicked and you could see this steady rise of them turning into, the kind of team that I think everybody, at least everyone within the Utah world, thought that they could be in the Pac-12. I think they've kind of surprised some people with as competitive as they've kind of been from the jump, even in those down years. But yes, making this Rose Bowl was a huge deal. It was always going to be a huge deal, but I think it means just that much more this year because of what happened with Ty Jordan, because of what happened with Aaron Lowe, and just some of the extra struggles that they had to go through in order to get to this point. So they're going to be very motivated because it's not just about them and it's not just about the Utah community. It's about their fallen brothers too.
Utah, very much a program that falls in line with the reputation and kind of the personality of its head coach. Mm-hmm. Kyle Whittingham's been there a long time. He's known to bring his lunch pail, work hard, strong in the trenches. Defensive front's always going to be one of the best you can find anywhere. people across the nation usually look for other programs to emerge in the Pac-12, whether that's Chip Kelly making a splash at UCLA or Herm Edwards at Arizona State. USC obviously always given a lot of attention and credit. Oregon in the North. Everybody looking for some excuse for anybody else in the Pac-12 to win the conference. But Utah seems to not really mind, just goes along with taking care of its own business and being in conference title contention at the end.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly their MO. It kind of stuns me year after year that a team like USC is given the benefit of the doubt, and especially when they've been under a coach, Clay Helton, that's proven time and time again that he just could not get the job done with the talent that they had. And I think people just would glance at the roster and be like, oh, well, yeah, 4 and 5 stars. Like, of course they're gonna win, without paying attention to the history. And Utah always seems to get ignored in that front. But Utah's history is really pretty great too. They're more of a developmental school. They don't have near the 4 stars that like a USC or an Oregon would have. They don't have any 5 stars. I kind of suspect that's going to start changing here in maybe the next year or two. They'll probably land their first 5-star recruit ever. But it's so funny. I think in a lot of people's minds, Utah is still a Mountain West Conference school. And they've kind of proven time and time again they're anything but that. But for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because they just don't play a really super sexy brand of football or, what it is. But they just don't seem to get near the respect when it comes to, voting and kind of guessing who's going to end up being at the top of the conference. In the last 3 seasons, Utah's been right there in it. So it'll be interesting again to see if the tide changes. They recently just opened up a stadium renovation that makes them look a little more big money. They've been doing a little bit more stuff with like uniforms, doing a better job with promo and social media presence. And we'll see if that all just kind of pays off. And obviously a win in the Rose Bowl against the Ohio State would go a long ways toward that too.
Folks, we're here talking college football each and every day, so please join the discussion. Best discussion, debate, and analysis, we believe, because of your participation. Join Michelle at Utes Zone on 247 Sports and join the discussion there as Utah, obviously, with everybody else, just finished up National Signing Day. There's the transfer portal is always in motion. And, of course, you got the Rose Bowl matchup against Ohio State. So, Michelle, Tavion Thomas, 1,000 yards, 20 touchdowns. Brynn Covey, I find it funny that he's been around forever. Mm-hmm. He caught almost 50 passes this year, and I think 2015, was his first season. So for those people that are going to check out, and there's going to be a lot of people check out Utah football for the first time in the Rose Bowl, just highlight a number of players that catch your eye on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness. There's a number of people that you could kind of keep an eye on and that could be a problem for Ohio State, at any point in time. That's something once they figured it out this year, that was really hard for teams to plan for and manage. You mentioned Tavion Thomas. He's actually a kid from Ohio. Ohio State had some interest in him, and he ended up going the JUCO route and finding his way out to Utah. But he's a sensational story. Hasn't even played or started in all the games this year and still managed to get 1,000 yards rushing, which is phenomenal. And it's like 3rd place in the country, I believe, in touchdowns made. And I'm sure he'll probably put up 1 or 2 more, this game, I would assume. You mentioned Brynn Covey. He's been with the program forever. He's probably one of the heart and soul pieces of this team. Just very wise beyond his years, but also a really just entertaining football player. Does a lot with punt returns and kickoff returns. He does a lot sometimes, in the receiving end of it. You have a trio of tight ends in Cole Fotheringham, Brant Keithy, and Dalton Kincaid that can cause fits and problems. Utah has been typically running a lot of 13 personnel this year, which has caught a lot of people off guard, and they're not entirely sure how to deal with that. You have TJ Pledger, the transfer running back from Oklahoma, that's been very productive for Utah. And then, of course, Cam Rising has also, been a difference maker at quarterback for them. And then guys like Bamadale Olaseni at left tackle. He is a massive human being. He's 6'8" and like almost 400 pounds. And he can definitely move some bodies around and was kind of a late bloomer. And then you have Nick Ford kind of anchoring the line, and he's been around for a little while, was actually a defensive player that they've moved over to the offensive line, and he'll do some productive things, I think, in the NFL. And then on the other side of the ball, you have guys like Devin Lloyd, who 2-star recruit. Utah's polished him up. He's probably going to go in the top 5 this year in the NFL draft. He's put up just stupid numbers this year at linebacker. And then his partner in crime, Nephi Sewell, is the brother of Noah Sewell, who people are maybe a little more familiar with, who plays linebacker at Oregon. He's another talented Sewell kid. He can make some noise and be very disruptive. You have a guy named Junior Tafuna that kind of got thrown into duty early and has been very productive. You have a guy like Clark Phillips that actually Ohio State thought they had in the bag and Utah flipped him. And so he's going to be making, his debut against the school that he was going to go to until he changed his mind and went to Utah. It's just any given day, really. They have a lot of talent throughout their program. Guys that can pop up at any time, any moment, and be very productive. I know it's very easy to look at the roster and be like, oh, well, Ohio State has, a plethora of 5-star guys that they can replace guys in and out with. Utah's guys can compete. They can compete, and I think they'll make a game of it.
Yeah, Covey, of course, this season had one of the more electrifying punt returns you're going to ever see. They kind of closed the deal against Oregon and said, okay, yeah, this game's over. They're done, and Utah's going to take this one. Looking at this matchup, it is a game of traditional have and have-nots. Ohio State's always in playoff contention. I produced a video that basically went down all-time rankings from both schools in terms of wins and winning percentage and national titles and all that kind of stuff, NFL draft picks. And of course, it's not close from an all-time standpoint, but the all-time teams are not playing in this game. It's going to be the 2021 squads. But is Utah still taking that underdog role to heart, do you think?
I would suspect so. To me, I was a freshman in college when they played Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, and it kind of is feeling a lot like that, like 10 years later, maybe even more so. These kids have something to prove, and these coaches have something to prove. Like I said, and it's just so much bigger than just them, just the program, just the community. It's the kids that they lost along the way that should be here, and they probably, in some freaky way, are there with them and enjoying every moment of this. But it just, at least from my perspective, and maybe it's biased because I'm around them all the time, I cover them, but it just feels like there's something extra going on there. And whether or not that means anything in this game or out on the field on Saturday, we'll find out. But that just has kind of been the feeling since that USC game earlier in the year. And they really have not let up the brakes on that at all.
And it's been well documented. This is a team that's had to overcome adversity beyond what's happened on the field over the last year or so in regards to the football family and the loss of 2 lives. And this Ohio State team got bullied and pushed around by Michigan the last game of the season. And if they're not prepared and buckled up and ready to go, Utah's got similar capabilities to push teams around. So It should be an interesting one, that's for sure. Michelle Bodkin, Utes Zone 247 Sports. Join her, the rest of the staff there covering Utah football. Michelle, we appreciate you stopping by. Enjoy the game.
Will do, Mark. Thanks. Anytime.